Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donoghue here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. On Monday, farmersjournal.ie broke the news that a boat for livestock exports to Turkey is on its way to Ireland. I sat down with our news correspondent Paul Mooney to discuss the impending arrival to Irish shores and what it means for farmers and the wider industry.
Patrick, a livestock specialist carrier boat is, as we speak, en route up from Spain up to Ireland. It's the Atlantic M purpose-built boat. It can carry up to 2,500 adult cattle, so it's likely, all going well, to fill with that number of livestock sometime in the middle of next week.
Cattle are bought, ready to put on the ship?
It would appear that most of the cattle have been bought. I believe that the exporter involved will put on some of the cattle that would have been bought earlier in the summer, Patrick, when it was first hoped that Turkey would open. Now, that of course was delayed by changes in the marketplace there, changes centrally, basically an attempted coup as well followed. So the trade is only open now. Some of those cattle that were assembled back then were exported to other markets. Some of them are here still in exporters' yards and will probably go on this boat.
And what type of cattle are they, Paul?
The contract, I understand, is for bulls weighing up to about 600 kilograms, so bigger animals, but it certainly is for factory type or slaughter type animals, so it's up to 600 kilos, Patrick, and all different breeds.
And we're looking at a beef price in Ireland again under pressure. Quotes this week of $3.75 a kilo, some farmers not even getting quotes. What's the beef price in Turkey at the minute?
The carcass beef price in Turkey at the moment is between 7 and 8 euros per kilogram. That's what I'm hearing, which is a very, very high price. It's probably about the highest price in the world, certainly well over Irish and EU prices. And that's what makes the market so attractive at the moment.
And this week we see a boat coming in. Are we likely to see more boats coming in, more cattle going out from Ireland to Turkey?
That is the most important point. One boat is not going to make a huge difference to the autumn trade, Patrick, obviously. So farmers will be hoping there will be further boatloads. Number one, that this boat will come back after it's sailing to Turkey, and hopefully a second boat will be put on the route. You know, a number of boats are available and have been given approval by the Department of Agriculture previously and would expect to be approved again. Hopefully we'll see one of those boats put onto this route over coming weeks.
How are farmers reacting to this news, Paul? You know, any type of competition in the market is usually always welcomed.
Yeah, I mean, in the past 10 days there, we've seen a report drawn up by an economist for IFA pointing to weak competition in the whole beef and livestock sector. So farmers are all too well aware of that, and they are very pleased to see an element of new competition reintroduced in the form of live exports, both for younger stock, you know, the weaning animals, and for the bigger factory type animals as well. So they very warmly welcome this, Patrick.
Thanks, Paul. And you've more on this week's breaking story in Farmers Journal and farmersjournal.ie on the news that 2,000 cattle initially heading to Turkey in the next coming days. Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Irish Farmers Journal agri-business editor Owen Lowry was in Mitchelstown in Cork this week at the opening of Kerrygold's new butter plant. There he met Kevin Lane, CEO of Ornua, formerly the Irish Dairy Board, and he started by asking him what the benefit of the new facility will be to the Kerrygold brand and to Irish dairy farmers.
There's a number of benefits, Owen. I guess the first one is we have been able to grow very significantly in the Kerrygold brand over the last number of years, and we never had our own manufacturing facility, our own NPD facility. We were procuring product from 6 different members, all of whom had different pack sizes, different packaging considerations, and consumers around the world were telling us that they wanted the Kerrygold butter packed consistently in a certain type, shape, format and pack type. And we realised, working with our members, that we had to end up bringing all of those manufacturing facilities into one, going state-of-the-art, super efficient, joining up the supply chain from the farmer, the milk, into the cream, into the butter, in one coordinated, efficient and sustainable way. And that's why Kerrygold Park was born.
Very interesting. It's a capacity of about 50,000 tonnes. Kerrygold achieves, I suppose, a premium in the markets. And butter at the moment is doing quite well. What's driving the price of butter at the moment?
There is a very, very big move worldwide, and it's not just in the developed markets, but worldwide. Consumers have got nervous and concerned about all the different additives, preservatives, E-numbers, and different unknown ingredients that were going into their old margarines. And they have come to the realization that some fat, is good for you, and butter, produced in a pure and natural way, for us off of grass, is a product that ticks all the boxes in terms of it being pure, natural, and negative ingredient free. And we've seen a massive conversion over from margarines, which were growing very fast, over to real butter, and Kerrygold was a big benefactor of that. Second thing that's happened, Owen, is there's an awful lot more butter being used in baking and in cooking, and some of those great baking programs and some of the great interest now, both young and old, in baking and cooking at home is driving a resurgence in butter usage, and again, we're very fortunate to be getting the benefit of that.
Kerrygold has been hugely successful since its inception in the 1960s, to the point where I think retail sales are about 750 million at the moment. You have ambitions to grow that to about €1 billion in the next couple of years. How are you going to do that, and where's the markets going to be?
We have framed a 5-year plan, so it's not a couple of years. It'll probably take us most of those 5 years on. You're as bad as my board for setting tough targets. We have a genuine aspiration that has been built from the ground up in getting an extra 250 million of sales by 2021. That's in the 5-year plan. It's going to happen in 3 main ways. Number one, we're going to continue to grow through new product development, because butter is butter, but an awful lot of people are looking for it in different shapes, colours, spreadability, pack sizes, even stick butter. A big new investment here. We've invested over €2 million on this facility in being able to produce butter for catering in sticks. So not for catering customers, but for premium customers buying Kerrygold packet in a stick format. Second thing we'll do is we'll go to new markets. As you know, we've expanded heavily into the Middle East, into Africa, into China. We would see those as core new growth opportunities for us. And then the third area is, believe it or not, we still think that the core markets of the UK, Germany and the USA have an awful lot more growth left in them. Maybe less so in butter and more in other products, like we just launched yogurt in Germany and it's doing extremely well. We've launched cream liqueur in the States and it's doing very well. So we think if we can dial up in terms of new products, new markets and more growth in existing markets, that's how we feel the 250 million extra will come by 2021.
Yeah. So very positive, Kevin, on that. I suppose for farmers listening at the moment, they're looking at their milk price. It's quite challenged, albeit that we have seen the GDT global prices moving up in recent weeks. Where do you see the outlook, I suppose, the longer term, short term outlook over the next few months on dairy prices?
Yeah, look, it's good news. Let's all be clear on that. None of us were happy, whether it was the farmer, the processor, the marketeer. No one could live at 23, 24 cent a litre. There were horrible lows. They were unsustainable. We were below the cost of production. It was a nightmare for everyone, and it's very, very hard on farming families to be trying to run a farming enterprise and have money in their pocket at the end of each week at a return level of that. Not sustainable. So what we're seeing now is, and Joe Collins has said it the best cure for low prices is low prices. And he had predicted, to his credit, that 2 things would happen. The terribly low prices was again going to stimulate more demand. At those low levels, more people were going to buy dairy because of the affordability index. And the second thing that has happened is a number of farmers, not so much in Ireland interestingly, but internationally, have started to reduce supply, cull cows, pull back on feeding, and supply is starting to drop off. And in fairness, there were 2 predictions that he had made and that we believe are now flushing through. And certainly the short to medium term outlook looks much more positive, and it is badly needed.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's fair enough to say. Look, Kevin, I know you're busy here today. A great day for Kerrygold brand and great day for Ornua and indeed Irish dairy farmers. Thanks very much for speaking to me.
Thanks, Owen.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Minister for Agriculture Michael Creed spent last week travelling Asia on an agri-food trade mission. Irish Farmers Journal Deputy Editor Jack Kennedy travelled on the trade mission, and while there he spoke to Matthew Quinton, Chief Financial Officer of Wyeth Nutrition, about milk prices.
Clearly, price, we all agree that we've rocked the rock bottom, historical lows in the last few months, and we already see signs of recovery. We see prices, a couple of months I've seen world market prices going up by 15 to 20%. Those are clearly the lowest levels we've reached, and we expect those prices to rise in the coming 6 to 12 months. And obviously with the appetite for design, with the growing appetite for affiliated products, not only dairy and infant formula, but we talk about other products, this is obviously there to stay, and we expect prices to go up in the future. This is for me just a matter of time. We see household, of course, income growing. There is greater demand already in the key NA cities, but the demand will of course come also from the lower tier cities in China. So we know demographic urbanization trends, these are there already to evolve.
In our meetings in the last number of days, we have heard of maybe that China is in a slight little bit of a slump at the moment in terms of the economy. Would you see it picking up?
Clearly, I mean, there've been slowdowns in several industries. China is still growing at staggering 6 to 7% GDP, which is by far one of the highest GDP growths in the world. We obviously have good signs of recovery. I mean, in our own category, infant formula, we see a number of births, a third baby boom, which is expected in the next 2 to 3 years.
Are Wyatt satisfied Ireland can supply future Irish-sourced dairy supplies?
We are prepared, obviously, to supply China, and Ireland will be the main supply source for us. So yes, absolutely. We've been 40 years in Ireland, and our factories with the right capacities, and we project that already. I think more than imports or domestic, I think the requirements is for safety, and it's for hygienic products, generally speaking. So Ireland stands for quality. It's a model of excellence in the area of agriculture. Beyond agriculture, it's also well known for its R&D capabilities, which are also recognized by Chinese consumers. There is, for Ireland, a very good imagery. Obviously, people look at Ireland knowing that Ireland stands for not only excellence, sustainability. We've talked about it today.
That message about sustainability and Origin Green, is it providing a strategic advantage to Wyatt?
I think we are still in the very early stages of Chinese consumer understanding what sustainability stands for. But you're not without ignoring that China, a lot of elements and risks surrounding health and pollution factor on top of the agenda. So I'm pretty sure that sustainability will be a differentiation for Ireland.
That message of Origin Green, will you be promoting that within China to the Chinese more over the next year or two?
I'm convinced we will, and others will as well, because Ireland, as a source of, I believe, first in the world to have established this nationally.
Minister, we're coming to the end of the Chinese leg of our tour. Are you still optimistic about the opportunity for China?
Well, I am. I mean, the figures in the last couple of years show a kind of a dramatic growth in the Irish exports here, gone from 2012 to over 600 million now. But the most interesting figure to keep in mind is the total value of the food market here is 700 billion, projected to get to 1,000 billion by 2020. And bear in mind, our ambitious targets, as in Foodwise 2025, are to grow our total exports. Total exports are on the globe billion. Our second biggest market for dairy outside the UK, with significant emphasis in infant formula. But there is huge opportunity here. The ambition is to have 70% in urbanised settings by 2030. The opportunity here, given the scale of the market.
Scale, Minister, but there's also a lot of, and yesterday on our tour around we saw a lot of product from New Zealand and from Australia. Is there any opportunity of a free trade agreement or even a reduced tariff agreement, even in an EU context, that would benefit Ireland?
Well, as you know, we have pooled our sovereignty to the EU in terms of negotiating trade agreements. Having said that, we have negotiated a land of understanding with various Chinese authorities. All companies are fit and capable of taking on anybody in the globe, the New Zealanders included, and whereas they may have concluded trade agreements, we have access here and we can build them, like the Kerrys, the Glanbias, the Dairy Golds, all of whom are on this trip. They're capable of taking on any of these.
Minister, we've heard in our meetings for the last number of days about the Chinese and how interested they are in our technology and our IP. Would it be of benefit to the Irish industry if the Chinese got involved in processing our end product in Ireland?
There is scope for greater involvement and building our universities, building partnerships, and that's a lot of what's going on here between the Chinese food companies.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
While on the trade mission, Jack also met with the CEO of Being Mate, one of the largest infant formula companies in the world. He started by asking him if Being Mate was considering further investment in the infant formula processing in Ireland.
企业去管理会比较好， Processing plants in Ireland has already cooperating with Kerry, Charlevoix.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But for farms, Mr. Huang thinks better to leave the Irish farmer and operate their own farms better than corporate.
And I understand in the Kerry piece, but I'm wondering, will they put more money into the Charleville plant? Is there plans for expanding it?
Actually, Being May has been discussing with Kerry about upgrading or enlarging in Charlevoix. If they worked out a arrangement, they will be more than happy to invest more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have Beam make plans to invest more in processing using Chinese sourced milk? So we've talked about Kerry and maybe investing in Kerry. Now I'm bringing the question more in China in processing infant formula.
Being May owns 7 processing plants here in China, and 5 of them they manufactures infant formula products. They think they have already invested a lot in this area, but they want to upgrade or expand their investment. They will in Heilongjiang province, in northeast.
Correct. Northeastern. Yeah. I mean, I suppose my question is, there are going to be more babies in China, and 16, 17, 18, 19 million babies per year. Have being made capacity in the existing plants to deliver enough product?
可以保证的一个供应。
Because they do the planning in advance. The current capacity of these 5 processing plants the increasing volume.
开瑞提供的这个原料给我们。
The current capacity, Mr. Huang thinks can meet the babies in next 5 to 10 years, and also lots of ingredients are from Kerry.
How important is Origin Green in building the Being Made brand? You have a Green Plus product. Do you promote this to China?
Origin Green is, of course, important for Being Made brand products. They worked with the previous minister, Simon Coveney, to launch the product. And they are happy to promote their products and with the orange and green concept. And Mr. Huang also hoped that government could help to promote orange and green to Chinese consumers.
I mean, does he feel that the consumers understand? I mean, some of them will not know where Ireland is from, but do they understand then cows at grass?
去推广这个概念。
Because Being Made is a mid to high-end brand, and so the key target consumers are from the second-tier or third-tier cities, and the consumers there, they have recognition of sustainability and natural and some other concepts like this, and that more Chinese consumers will be aware of the green concept in the near future. So it's he's positive.
Yeah. And he's going to invest more in promoting that in the future. Being Made will invest more in promoting Origin Green, as will Ireland.
He's definitely continue investing to promoting Being Made together with Origin Green concept. Also, he hopes that Irish government and Irish companies like Kerry to promote this.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
The Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association held a farmer meeting in Athlone last Thursday night. Our news correspondent Paul Mooney was there, and he spoke with ICSA General Secretary Eddie Punch about farmer fears on trade deals, as well as the frustration at the lack of action on flood plans.
Well, the guys here on the ground in the Athlone area are saying that the Shannon is higher already in September than it was this time last year, and they think that's a very ominous sign. So their big concern is that with any kind of similar weather to last year, they're heading for an even bigger disaster where even more land will be flooded, where houses that avoided it last year and sheds that avoided it last year will be precarious this year. And they're absolutely worried, looking at the levels in the Shannon, even as we speak here in September, and they see nothing done yet to alleviate the potential problems with remedial works. They want to see diggers in action as quick as possible, wherever possible.
And have you and your members any confidence that the money will be spent
certainly
on remedial action?
Certainly there's a commitment to doing something. The problem is what? And what we think in ICSA and what the farmers here think is there's too much money going into reports, there's too much money going into coordinating all the different agencies that are responsible for the Shannon. They also believe that what needs to happen here is to utilise not just the OPW but private contractors to do this kind of dredging work, digger work. They think that will be far better with spending of money than more and more reports. We've had a lot of talk about, looking at this issue, pushing it around, playing it around between the different agencies, and a general sense of frustration that a few track machines would do a lot more work than all the pin pushing reports.
Eddie, what fears did farmers express here at the meeting?
A lot of concerns about the outlook for the cattle trade. We had a live exporter here tonight, and certainly the big issue is who's going to buy the weanlings, how much can they make, and a lot of frustration that there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of hold-ups around live export markets. The Turkish trade is the big hope, but the real concern is can we get live export markets for heavier weanlings and for heavier store cattle and so on, and people feeling very despondent that the outlook for Irish beef being sold to Irish factories is very dubious at the moment. So we absolutely have to put more and more effort into getting live cattle shipped off this island.
Eddie, what steps would you like to see taken by the Minister now, for the autumn cattle trade?
I think, the Minister, as with the previous Minister, has put a lot of effort into getting China and the US open for beef. We've seen some progress in manufacturing beef in the US. We see the Minister in China again this week. And we'd like to see the same efforts being put into getting over the log jams that are causing problems with the Turkish trade, and potentially also work being put into opening up Egypt and other live export markets. We have to have a balance between live exports and beef, and without that, the Irish cattle trade will be under pressure.
Eddie, I know there were fears expressed at the meeting about sale of Irish beef in Italy and maybe a problem that could be emerging with the supermarket and retail trade there.
Yeah, there's definitely a concern that it'll be harder and harder to sell store cattle or weanlings to Italy if Italian retailers go down the same road as British retailers. And we know the problem with British retailers. They won't stock on the shelves beef from cattle born in the Republic finished in the UK, and that's a big problem for our exports or our potential to export live cattle to the UK. Italy hasn't had that problem previously. There's now some concerns that the Italian retail trade is consolidating and that these kind of tricks are going to be utilised as well to, I suppose, impact on free trade. And the big problem is we have free trade for big beef processors, but we don't seem to have as much importance put in free trade for live exports and for, if you like, the smaller operators.
Okay. Two other concerns I know that were raised at the meeting, Eddie, were about Mercosur and, unfortunately, possibly beef imports into Europe being back up on the agenda again, and secondly, how that might be affected by Brexit as well. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, a couple of things have happened actually in the last few days. Cecilia Malmström has said again in recent days that beef is not off the agenda for the Mercosur talks. But on the other hand, from an ICSA point of view, we believe that Mercosur should be absolutely stalled until we know exactly what's going to happen with the UK in terms of post-Brexit trade deals. The problem here is this, that we have so far got to this point where 78,000 tonnes was offered by the EU to South America on Mercosur, on the assumption that we had an EU of 28 member states, of which the UK had a substantial import requirement. That needs to go. But at the moment the risk is that will stay in place because EU has already conceded it. But now, in a post-Brexit scenario, the main customer for this 78,000 tonnes is no longer part of the EU and is actually free to do its own trade deal. And you could have the appalling vista where Europe still concedes a 78,000 tonne quota for beef, but without the EU or the UK customer, and at the same time the UK does its own deal, and we end up doubling the amount of tariff-free beef coming into Europe, and that would be absolutely devastating for beef farmers right across Europe, but most importantly for the exporting beef farmers of Ireland.
Okay, one to watch. Thanks very kindly, Eddie Punch, General Secretary of ICSA.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
The Agricultural Science Association held its annual conference last week. Here, ASA President Neil Keane explains to Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Odile Evans what the conference involves.
There's 650 guests coming from all across the industry, from different sectors. Unique networking opportunity, and really the way the ASA have set this event up is as a platform to move the industry on in a positive fashion. And it's a unique opportunity as well to get the people from different subsectors all under the one roof for a positive evening to celebrate what's good in Irish agriculture.
And what are you most looking forward to tomorrow at the conference?
Personally, I'm really interested in the human capital session. I think people is a big important element in any industry. I'm really looking forward to hearing Nicola McCracken. She's head of talent development, one of the largest private employers in the country outside of agri, but she's going to give a perspective on how do we do the best job in retaining, engaging and attracting talent into the industry. So that's probably the one I'm looking forward to most. I think it's one of the ones that probably isn't addressed enough. We have a lot of farm expansion going on and a lot of discussions around finance and grassland management and genetics, which are all important, but people is one of the most important things, and how do we actually engage people on farms if we're going to hire staff and free up personal time for ourselves. So that's the session I'm looking forward to.
Perfect. And this tomorrow evening you'll be finished your role as ASA President. What have the highlights been for you?
The international study tour was a good fun in Denmark. That gave us a really good perspective. One of the main highlights probably has been working with young graduates like yourself. And undergraduates. That's been one of the most exciting elements for me. Quite humbling as well to see the quality of talent that's coming through in the industry. So I think that's probably been the biggest eye opener for me, and one of the most exciting things I think as well for Irish Agri moving forward is to see that talent that is coming through the system.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
I spoke with Jack A. Bobo, Senior Vice President at Intrexon and former advisor to Hillary Clinton, about his presentation at the ASA conference. The old expression is, when you're explaining, you're losing, so I started by asking him if agriculture was losing the debate.
I don't think so. People have never cared more nor known less how their food was produced. So in some ways, you're winning when people care about what you do. 10 years ago, food and agriculture just wasn't as big a thing. And so I think this is an opportunity. People don't know how food was produced, and so they don't realize that things are actually moving in a good direction. So that's the story that agriculture needs to tell. By and large, farmers are not that comfortable going out in front of the spotlight and telling their story, and they're going to need to become more comfortable. Scientists are going to need to become more comfortable.
Then who does it fall on? Because, inherently people don't trust government, they don't trust big companies like Monsanto, or who is the person to tell that story?
I think that the farmers and scientists need to step up, and they need to be encouraged to do that. And you don't get promoted, you don't get tenure because you've been out there doing public speaking, and some of that needs to change. It's not enough just to publish research in journals that nobody reads. Why not publish an article in a newspaper about the research you publish that nobody's going to read? Giving them credit and acknowledgement and encouragement and training. Not everybody is a natural speaker. In fact, almost nobody is. Creating the opportunities for people to get their information. I think eventually they will begin to realize that there's a huge benefit in being able to tell their own story instead of relying on other people to tell it for them.
The great cliche is the 9 billion people by 2050, and you've taken it a step further today. You've gone beyond that, and that when you go to 2100, the population is going to steady off and maybe even decline. Does that mean then there's going to be less of a demand on land and agriculture as a whole, or does agriculture then become less relevant?
So things will change, but it's not necessarily a bad change. I was speaking to soybean growers a couple of years ago, and I told them in 2050 there will be no soybean growers in America, which kind of made them a little nervous. And then I went on to say, There will be high oleic, low linoleic, there'll be value-added growers. And so there's going to be this diversification in agriculture that has not yet happened. There won't just be one type of barley, there'll be many. There won't be one type of canola. And so that's what technology is going to do, is it's going to help us to differentiate these products. That's going to create new opportunities. Who wants to be in the commodity business, the volume business? You want to be in a value-added business. And so I think over time, agriculture is going to deliver more and more nutritional benefits, and that means that you can produce less, but of a higher quality and higher returns.
When you say technologies, the horrible two letters GM, regardless whether you're in Ireland or America, it's still something that strikes fear and anger into a lot of people. How far away are we from people readily accepting that type of technologies, and do we need them more than ever?
Well, we need science and technology more than ever, and GM is just a piece of that. If we start choosing to not do research into certain areas, we're just limiting our ability to achieve our goals. People care more about avoiding a technology than saving the planet. That's their choice, but then they're going to have to live with the consequence. What I would rather do, though, is focus on how are those technologies benefiting people, because the only way to change people's minds is to make it in their own self-interest. The average person in Europe doesn't realize that 3/4 of the animal feed is imported, and it's all GM anyway. They don't realize that their beer, wine, and cheese are all produced with genetically modified microorganisms. Europe's labeling laws keep that hidden, not necessarily intentionally. Part of it is making that known. But what's really going to change people's mind is when you deliver a product that somebody says, I want that product because it's a GM. And the Arctic apple, the non-browning GM apple, I think, is one technology that could do that. Because anybody who has children and who has ever sent them to school with sliced apples and gotten their box home and it still had the apples in there because they look nasty, understands that you want your kids to eat it. It's a small thing. But when you think about food waste, 190,000 tons of apples are thrown away in the UK every year. People say, well, I eat the brown apples. But how many people go into the store and they choose the bruised apple? They're still going to choose the best one. They still might eat it when it's brown at home, but they're still adding to that food waste.
If you weren't somebody who's touring, giving talks like this, providing informed commentary, and you were actually able to change global policy, is that what you would bring to food policy, the more adoption of technologies?
Science and technology is important. I think the psychology of food is also important because we have two important global trends. We have obesity on one hand and we have undernutrition on the other hand. And so science and technology can help with having more food, but we really need to understand consumer behavior more in order to reduce the incidence of obesity and these other things. There's not just one issue that's going to solve everything, but science is critical to our understanding of all problems.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Finally, with just 6 weeks to go until this year's Women in Agriculture Conference, Irish Country Living editor Mairead Lavery tells Mary Phelan where the new location is and what we can expect this year.
Well, we're all getting old, Mary. The conference has been running for 9 years.
Oh my God.
This is its 9th year. Well, every 2 years we go somewhere differently. So we started in Athlone for 2 years. Then we headed to Kilkenny for the Lyrat for a couple of years. Then we went down to Killarney to the Europe and up to Meath to Trim. And this year we're going up to the northwest. First time Sligo, great catchment area of Sligo, Mayo, Galway, Donegal, Fermanagh, Cavan, Monaghan, and we really want to see people from that part of the country who've never been at Women in Ag before to come along this year.
What speakers, who are you excited about this year? Are you able to reveal the lineup? I know that it was under wraps for a while.
We can certainly reveal some of the lineup, and the thing about it is about being excited about different speakers. Sometimes it's the speakers that you really don't think are going to maybe hold the attention of the audience, or you worry about because it's their first time public speaking, because an awful lot of the speakers that we have are women in agriculture. They're women who are in farming or who've set up businesses or who have health issues or whatever, but it's all to do with being farm women. And sometimes people get a standing ovation that you would never have thought of. And it's when those moments happen at the conference, that's what really excites me about it. And every year I wonder, what's going to be the moment this year? What is it that is absolutely going to leave 650 women in a hall or in a big function room silent utterly silent. You could hear a pin drop. But often it's that quiet person who gets up to tell their story, what happened to them, how they got on, that just every person in the room empathises with. And that's what creates the moment, and that's what I love about Women in Ag.
Okay, so study the programme closely, because you might never know who'll surprise you.
You don't know now. I mean, we have some big names as usual. A woman that often gets spoken about but very rarely speaks in public, and that is Fionnuala Kenny, the wife of the Taoiseach. She's going to be there. I'd imagine she's going to give us a great insight into what her role is. And like an awful lot of women who marry onto farms, they move outside our parish, they move outside our area. She moved certainly from where she would have been comfortable up to Mayo. Joan Freeman of Pieta House, I mean, the whole area of mental health is now so much more out there and spoken about. The whole Darkness into Light campaign, how that has captured the imagination, and the differences since she began Pieta House in the attitudes to mental health, and also to put the likes of Pieta House under scrutiny, you know, to ask the hard questions. So, I mean, they're just two. We've Nevin Maguire doing a cookery demonstration. We also have 2 on the couch sessions this year, and this year now we have Mary Sadler from Cool Swan is going to be talking, dairy farmers who established Cool Swan. Anna Marie McHugh, everyone knows her from the ploughing, but she's the Secretary General of the World Ploughing Association. Margaret Farley from Clonarn Eggs, that side of the country, Cavan and Mead border there. She's going to be talking about her business, starting off with 150 hens. And Margaret Hochter then, Wicklow, Kilmullen Farm. And again, what she's had to do there in terms of giving up her corporate job, going back on the farm and really making it value added. So the morning is very business orientated. We will have the Minister for Agriculture there, Michael Creed. The afternoon then is much more about empathy and about women's health. And one of our main speakers for the afternoon session is Dr. Rona Mahoney, the master of Hall Street Hospital.
Okay, that's a very, very packed programme, Mairead. I don't know how you're
fitting
it all
in.
Well,
that's only a bit of it.
I know it'll run like clockwork because I've been there for the last few years. But it's actually not just about the conference on the 27th. There is also an evening of entertainment the night before. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because I know it's a really nice night out.
Well, no, it's a fantastic night out. Look, we've fantastic support in Munster. The women in Cork and Kerry and Waterford and Clare and Tipperary and Limerick are really great to come. And we've had it in 2 years above in Trim, and now we're going up to the northwest. So when we started in Trim, we decided, look, they're not going to get up the N7 and the N8 and the N9 and get onto the M50 and come back out the road and be there for 9:30. So let's do something at night and do the best deal that we can possibly get for them, for dinner, bed and breakfast and a show. And anyway, we thought we'd get 100. We've had about 350 at it. It's an amazing night. It's really wonderful, and we're doing it again above in Sligo. The venue actually, it's happening in the Radisson, I think that's out the Strand Hill Road, and so we've a lovely evening booked for the night before, which will involve plenty of fun and entertainment and lots of dancing. So that's all sorted and organised. And tickets for that, I'm nearly sure they're about €89 for that is for the show, a gala dinner, 5-course, 6-course dinner, all the trimmings afterwards, dancing and bed and breakfast.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
You won't really get a better deal in the country.
Not
for
at
that.
all, certainly not. And a tailor-made programme for the night as well. So
and
bring
it
your
is
dancing
fun.
shoes, you're saying.
No, listen, for the twice we've run it, the dance floor has been full the whole night. And there is something kind of really engaging about maybe 100 women out dancing.
Of course.
It's not quite handbags in the middle of the floor, but it's great out fun.
If people do want to check out the finer details, where can they get tickets and where can they find out a bit more?
Well, we'll have tickets for sale at the ploughing, so you're more than welcome to come along and purchase there. They can be booked online at www.womenandagriculture.ie/booking. Now, they won't be coming on sale until the 28th of September, so there's another few days yet. But anyway, if you contact us, ring us here, 4199 014199 we'll get you through to the department that deals with it. For people who can organise buses, with 20 on it or 18 or 20 plus, we will help subsidise the cost of that bus. So, let us know if you think you're going to come up with a bus load. We'll really dig you out there when it comes to that. We're conscious, of the cost, and we know, it's a big day for people, and so we help with regards to that.
Okay. Well, it's just 6 weeks away really now, so I'm excited about it. So I guess if people are interested, they should start, considering it seriously now.
We've so many that come, year after year after year. It is their day out. It's their week out. Or they take maybe the 2 nights and they tour around the area. They come with their girlfriends and they come with their generations. Grannies, mothers, daughters come. Gangs of sisters, friends. They just make it a really nice time.
Well, Mairead, thank you very much for that. You can read more in this week's Country Living.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.